guys, we're back talking some more of The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power on the channel, episode 6. With so much of this season dedicated to the build-up, I'm so glad that episode 6 rewards me with all of my patience, because this is by far my favorite episode of the season. It's jam-packed, filled to the brim with great action sequences, as the plot is finally revealing itself, while also having some of these storylines finally converge into one another. It was pretty nerve-wracking going into this because we knew that Adar and his army of orcs were going to be marching in to try and slaughter all of Arondir's camp that didn't defect to him, and pretty much from this point on, the entire episode is pure action spectacle with a few minor breaks in between. I thought it was pretty awesome seeing Arondir kick so much ass this week. We haven't really seen him do too much in the action category this season so far, but this week he gets to pull out the moves. He's setting up traps to kill orcs, dropping buildings on them, including Adar. I mean, we know Adar's not going to die in this skirmish, but it was still surprising to see it look like for a moment there he was crushed. With so many episodes spent prepping to sail to Middle-earth, I'm glad that we finally are seeing the Númenórean crew finally set sail to Middle-earth. I was getting kind of nervous, to be honest, because we only have a couple episodes left of season 1, and they were still in Númenor until this episode. What I did like, though, on the journey to Middle-earth on this ship, we finally get the introduction between Isildur and Galadriel. I thought it was kind of amusing that Galadriel was actually curious that, like, why is Isildur even on this ship, because he has not really shown any sort of fighting prowess. But, I mean, he's obviously going to be trying to please his father in some shape or form on the battlefield eventually, and he's sweeping the floors on the ship, but we know Isildur has big aspirations ahead of him, so we're setting up the seeds for that there. The entire romance angle between Arondir and Bronwyn hasn't been one of my particularly favorite things since the beginning of the show. There just hasn't been enough there to really grab me and get invested into their relationship, but I think some of the tender moments in this episode has kind of won me over at least a little bit. I found it to be kind of sweet that they were planting seeds together and promising to do more after the battle is over, which it did make me nervous because a lot of the time when characters talk like that, usually at least one of them ends up not surviving said battle, and that almost ended up happening, actually. While I had a lot of fun viewing the first orc skirmish, the second one I think is just much better all around. It just has a much bigger scale to it because there are just so many orcs on screen, and they are brutal. The entire action sequence here is so brutal and vicious. It was genuinely kind of surprising how bloody and gory this got. I mean, it's not on the same level as like Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon violence, but for Lord of the Rings, this is kind of pushing it, but I'm okay with it because I'm used to that kind of stuff in fantasy. All around, it was still pretty amazing seeing all of Arondir's camp fight these orcs. Arondir, Bronwyn even gets in on the action. The most violent of the skirmishes, though, was Arondir fighting that one orc, and he stabs him in the eyeball and then takes the blade out, and he's just spurting blood all over his face. It was actually kind of disgusting. The way that it was framed, it seemed like it was supposed to be this big, shocking reveal that some of the people on the orc side were actually people from Arondir's camp who defected to join Adar's side. It's still an unfortunate part of war, but they kind of chose that fate for themselves, which, you know, I guess I can understand to an extent why that's sad for them, but at the same time, like, you picked the losing side. The actual bigger, shocking thing that came out of this was yet another surprise orc attack. There's so many orcs that they continuously have waves of them, but this one seems to be the most deadly. The way that they're taking out people left and right with arrows. Even Bronwyn gets hit with one of the arrows and gets taken inside. There's one thing I've learned over the years is when you have an object embedded in you, generally you shouldn't try and just rip it out of you because you potentially could bleed to death if you do that. And for some reason, they thought that that was the great idea, to rip the arrow out of Bronwyn, and she is bleeding all over the place. I mean, she literally barely survives. Arondir pulls out some crazy stuff at the last minute to save her life, but 9 out of 10 times, that's going to kill you. Surprising to pretty much nobody at this point, Adar shows up revealing that he did survive the first skirmish, and he is demanding the hilt that has the mark of Sauron that Theo's been hiding from everyone. But the best part of this, the most epic part for me, is the cavalry arriving. The people from Númenor come in to save the day. Galadriel, Halbrand, Isildur, Elendil, all of them taking control of the battle, joining forces to kill the rest of the orc army with Arondir's men. If I were in a theater watching this, I would be clapping and cheering. That's how awesome this entire section was. Even when Galadriel and Halbrand are chasing after Adar to get the hilt back. It was interesting here seeing some of the information revealed about Adar and Halbrand, because apparently they have a history with one another. I mean, it seems very suspicious because Adar apparently did something to Halbrand, but Adar doesn't know who he is. He doesn't look familiar to him. So it does fuel the flames when it comes to the suspicion around if he actually is Sauron or not. And that's not even taken into consideration later on when Adar is speaking to Galadriel. Adar mentions that he killed Sauron, so I have to wonder if Halbrand really is Sauron in disguise, and that is why Adar does not recognize him. That reveal will be disappointing on so many different levels because I have been enjoying the rapport being built between him and Galadriel. They're finally confiding in one another as allies. And not only just that, but now that the Queen Regent has actually introduced him to these people as the king that was promised to the Southlands. So I think that would be really bad if he ends up being Sauron in the future. Just when it seemed like things were looking up for everyone though, the old man actually has the hilt and uses it and causes everything to erupt around them. Chaos ensues. And the clouds are rolling in from that chaos. It's about to envelop Galadriel. I mean, we know Galadriel's not going to die, let's be real. But it's going to be interesting seeing what happens in these last 2 episodes of the season after this, because I think this was the best episode, and if they can top this episode and have some big, great, grand stuff for these last 2 with leading into season 2, I think it could be really something special. We finally hit the stride here where this show is actually paying off, at least in my opinion. So make sure you share your thoughts down below. What did you think of episode 6 of The Rings of Power? Did you like the episode? Did you not like the episode? Is this your new favorite episode of The Rings of Power so far? And also share any thoughts or theories you may have on where we're going to go with the next couple episodes. As part of the fun of this time, I'll comment with you guys in the comment section down below. Thank you guys always checking the reviews. I always do appreciate it. Make sure you leave a like on the video and also subscribe to the channel so I always update reviews, reactions, unboxings, and more. Next time, I'll see you guys later.